Welcome back to the Adventures in Marketing podcast. I am your host, Gwen Montoya. I am so glad that you are joining me today. And I want to be fully transparent with this episode because I think it's really important that people see things that work and things that don't work in businesses, especially in somebody like me who gives advice and tips and tries to make marketing not scary. And this is where I'm going to be transparent. This is the second time I'm recording this episode because the first time I forgot to hit the record button and I did the whole episode and it was so good. I was so relaxed. I was on top of everything. And I did it for my cat watching me talk to my silly screen here. So, yeah, let's do it again. I think that transparency is important. I recorded a whole podcast episode, ironically, about being consistent and making tiny steps. And then I didn't actually hit the record button. So, let's go again. So, thank you so much for joining me. I want to talk about small steps. Clearly, I think that they're important. If you've been around me for more than a minute, you know that I think that small steps add up over time. And they are not especially sexy when it comes to copy. They don't make really stunning sales pages. Just like show up every day and things change is not the kind of thing that sells in today's world, unfortunately. But you know what? Those small steps, they do add up and they do work. I have seen it in my own business and I've seen it in so many other businesses. So there's two quotes I want to share. One is the best time to start was yesterday. The next best time to start is now. Very inspiring. And the other one is the journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. I think we've probably all heard this one. It's true though. We can't start until we start, and we just have to take that first step. We just have to start with those tiny little steps, and that's how we build consistency over time. And what happens, I think, in my experience for my own business and when I've worked with clients, is that a lot of times we can get really stuck in this idea that if we don't have it all mapped out perfectly, if we don't have all the answers, we can't start. And that's what stops us from starting, is that we don't have all the answers and we know we don't have all the answers and we want it to be better than it is even in our minds. But if we don't start, then we can't get to the place where we can learn and grow, which means small steps. I'm going to keep coming back to small steps this entire time. And in fact, I want to share a non-marketing example. And I know I always talk about marketing here, my favorite topic, but actually the topic for this episode came up because of this non-marketing thing. So that's where I want to start it. So my kids and I make sugar cookies every year during the holidays. It is a 15-year tradition. We have a lot of fun with it. But if you've ever made sugar cookies, you know that it's kind of a commitment. Once you start, you really have to finish. There's no half doing sugar cookies. Not really. Not if you want to eat the sugar cookies at the end. You have to go through the whole process. And these cookies are not just mix in a bowl and then bake, right? They have steps because first you have to mix it and then you have to roll out the dough and then you have to refrigerate the dough and then you have to cut the dough and then you bake it and then you decorate and let it cool and then you can decorate it. It's a lot of steps. And sometimes, like this year, I did not have the chunk of time available when we wanted to make these sugar cookies that allowed me to do it all at once. And so I thought, oh, I'm not going to be able to do it this year. And I was really sad. But then I realized this is a thing that I can break into steps. I can take several small steps and still end up with sugar cookies at the end. And to me, that's a win. So I baked them over 3 days. And on day one, I mixed the dough and I rolled out the dough. And I just put it in the fridge for the next day. The next day, we cut the sugar cookies and then we baked the cookies. That was it. It took time, but it didn't feel like this overwhelming sense of having to do all of these steps. And then on the third day, we decorated the cookies and then we ate the cookies. So that was a win. But sugar cookies still happened, even if they didn't happen all at once. They happened over the course of 3 days, and it still tasted like sugar cookies at the end. And that was the goal. And tying it back to marketing, there's nothing that says that you can't post on social media until you have 30 days of content. There's nothing that says you can't send out an email if you don't have 12 months of content mapped out. And there's nothing that says you can't just send a little hello to your email list. You don't necessarily have to send them a digest of 800 things and 40 links and so much information, because what's going to happen is they're going to get overwhelmed. So instead of feeling like you can't send an email list until you have some sort of justifiable reason and a ton of information to send them, what if you just sent them a little hello and a little piece of information? And then you save some of that information that you were going to send them all in that one big email, and then you send it a couple of weeks later. And then maybe a couple of weeks later, you send them another email. And do you know what that is? That is consistent email marketing. That is you sending something to your list in a consistent way, in a way that does not feel overwhelming to you, and in a way that hopefully feels good to you and won't lead you to burnout. Because that's one of the things that I really want to help you avoid when we were talking about this, is that if you are caught up in thinking that the only way to do it is if you're taking these big, giant, bold stride moves, you're going to burn out. You're going to get frustrated. You're not going to see your work happening, or you're not going to see results from your work fast enough. But if you take small steps over time, you can see the improvements, you can see the adjustments, and you can course correct as you're doing it. Instead of waiting until the end of this giant thing and then realizing, oh, I didn't do this one thing that I should have done over here. So instead of feeling like that, I want you to feel like you have control of your marketing, that you can take small steps, that you can continue to do it in a way that feels good to you, and in a way that's not going to make you feel burned out and frustrated. We can even break down that idea of not having 30 days of content and feeling like until you have that mapped out, you can't possibly send anything. Instead of looking at it from that way, you don't even necessarily have to write an entire post at once. One of the ways that I like to create my own content is I like to map out the types of topics that I want to talk about over the course of, I like to do it in a month, but you don't have to. But I'm not writing the content. I am just thinking about the ideas. So then when I go back, it's more like I've given myself writing prompts, and then I can do those writing prompts. And then if I want to, if I'm in the mood, I can make the graphics at the same time. I know other people who have to start with the graphics. If that's how you work, start there and then figure out the other pieces. But you don't have to write a whole 15 posts, right? What if you just did one more post than you need? What if you did 2 posts a day for a week, and then you had a bunch of posts that you could schedule out over the course of a month if you wanted to do it that way? Or maybe you're somebody who just can't plan, and the idea of planning ahead makes you feel really frustrated and really trapped in. So what if you just gave yourself some ideas of prompts that you could use instead? That also works. Work in the way that works best for you instead of trying to force yourself to work the way somebody else works. Because when we're talking about marketing, especially if we're a small business, right? Like I wear a lot of hats. I know you wear a lot of hats. If you are the one wearing a lot of hats, that means that there's a lot of interruptions in your day. There's a lot of distractions, and there's a lot of things that you're thinking about. So we don't have a typical like 8 to 5. We are uninterrupted from our 8 to 5 job, and we get a nice little lunch break in the middle. I hope you're taking a lunch break. But for most of us, it doesn't look like that. We are not necessarily at our desk the whole time working in a specific way like that. But what happens is we get interrupted a lot through the day. We have emails coming in, we have text messages, maybe you have kids, maybe you have pets, you have things that you have to do, you have errands you have to run. So when we're thinking about how do you work best and how can you maintain this idea of small steps still count, you have to take into account your energy, your focus, other distractions. All of those things are going to impact how you work on any given day, because the focus and the energy that we bring to our work, as much as we love it, is going to vary from day to day. Maybe on Mondays is the day that you are able to give 100% for whatever reason. And on Wednesdays, you know that you're only going to be able to give 50%. So rather than trying to stack your day like it's a 100% day, stack your day like it's a 50% day, and give yourself some grace and take some things off of your calendar so that you don't end Wednesday feeling frustrated and disappointed in yourself. As an example, there are some tasks that you can interrupt me every 5 minutes. It's not going to bother me. Totally fine. I can get up, I can get down, I can fish the cat out of whatever he is doing. I can answer a question for my kids, and I can return an email, and I can go back to the task that I was working on. It's not going to bother me. There are other tasks where I need a solid 2 hours of time to work on them. And if I don't have that 2 hours worth of time, I'm not going to be able to do it. And if you interrupt me during that 2 hours of time, I'm going to be really cranky. So when I am planning my week, I think about where are those big chunks of time where I will be able to work on this stuff, and where is it going to be, this is kind of more of a morning of lots of little tasks that I can get interrupted about and I don't care, versus that one task that I need 2 hours and I cannot be talked to during that 2 hours. So you can set your week up in the same way. Figure out a way that works best for you and keep taking those tiny steps forward. I promise they add up. They will add up over time. You will be able to see your progress. Don't give up just because not every single step is this giant monster step. For most of us, what's going to be more efficient and effective over time are the baby steps, because they still count. That's all I have for you today. Thank you so much for joining me. If you want to learn more, you can head over to my website, gwenmontoya.com. If you have any questions, drop them in the comments and I would love to answer them for you.